Good morning, students. This is your economics online class. We are discussing the 9th chapter, Development Experiences in India. In the last class, we completed the post-harvest measures, Kisan Credit Card Scheme, Agricultural Produce Market Committee, and its functions of APMC, Agrarian Crisis after Reform, then the trade reforms. In trade reforms, export and import policy. What is the policy? Exim policy we completed. Okay. In this video, we have to discuss about the special economic zone, salient features of exim policy. Already we learned. Special economic zone, major objectives of special economic zone, main characteristics of special economic zone, fiscal reforms, goods and services tax, monetary and financial sector reforms. Okay, let us discuss about special economic zone. The special economic zone nothing but a view to overcome the shortcomings experienced on account of the multiplicity of controls and clearances, absence of world-class infrastructure, and an unstable fiscal regime, and with a view to attract larger foreign investment in India. So that the special economic zone need here. So with a view to overcome the shortcoming experienced. Okay, shortcoming experiences on account of the multiplicity controls and clearances. So these are lacking in India. So multiplicity of controls and clearances, absence of world-class infrastructures, everything lacking here. So that this is unstable fiscal regime. It brings the unstable fiscal regime and with a view to attract larger foreign investment in India. So because of this inconvenience, we cannot attract the larger foreign investment. Okay, so that we need a special economic zone, which is CIS. So the special economic zone policy was announced in April 2000. So this is one mark answer. As a part of the economic reforms, the system of taking over land by the government for commercial and industrial purposes was introduced in the country. Okay, the new economic reforms. So we know that the trade reforms made by the government and the export-import policy were made by the government for making a digital India, so that the special economic zones also provided by the government, overcoming the shortcomings, okay, in the trade circumstances. So that as part of the economic reform, this is also one of the part. The system of taking over land by the government for commercial and industrial purposes was introduced in the country. So whatever land taking by the government for commercial and industrial purpose, it was introduced in the country. As per the Special Economic Zone Act of 2005, the government has so far notified about 400 such zones in the country. 400 zones opened by the country. Since the cess deprives the farmers of their land and livelihood, it is harmful to agriculture. So that they developed the cess. It also deprives the farmers of the land and livelihood. The farmers' livelihood also affected. It is harmful to the agriculture. In order to promote export and industrial development and growth in line with globalization, the cess was introduced in many countries. Already about 400 economic zones developed by the government in India. And also to promote the export and industrial growth in line with globalization, the government introduced cess in many countries. See here the history of cess in India given here. The main motive is to invite larger foreign investment in India so that EPZs were converted into special economic zone. SEZs. India was one of the first Asia to recognize the effectiveness of the export processing zone model in promoting export with Asia's first EPZ set up in Kandla in 1965. The broad range of special economic zone covers free trade zones, export processing zones, industrial parks, economic and technology development zones, high-tech zones, science and innovative parks, free ports, and enterprises zones, and others. These are including in the special economic zone. So the export processing zone were modified as special economic zone. This may be asked in your 1 mark. Okay. The major objectives of the CES is to enhance foreign investment, especially to attract foreign direct investment. Okay. The foreign direct investment is very, very important to the country, so that they want to invite larger foreign investment. This is also called foreign direct investment, and thereby increasing the GDP of a country. To increase shares in global export. Okay, this is their motive. The international business will be increased, accelerated. To generate additional economic activity and to create employment opportunities through the economic special zone or special economic zone exim policy. These were made by the government for the creation of employment opportunities to the country youths. To develop infrastructure facilities. So what are the infrastructure facilities? Transport, airways, and navies, everything should be developed. To exchange technology in the global market. This is the main objectives of the special economic zones. The main characteristics of special economic zone. What are the main characteristics? The objectives, you know that. How many objectives they are given? 6 objectives they are given. Main characteristics of special economic zones is geographically demarcated area with a physical security, administered by single body authority. Then streamlined procedures. Streamlined procedure should be followed. Having separate custom area. The country, the special economic zone should have separate custom area. Governed by more liberal economic laws. So this should be governed the more liberal economic laws. Greater freedom to the firms located in economic zones, the special economic zones. Okay. As a result, they need not to respect the government's rules and regulations. Okay. Then the social and environmental impacts were disastrous. So these are the main characteristics of special economic zone. The next concept is fiscal reforms. A key element in the stabilization effort was to restore fiscal discipline. This is the key element to stabilization of effort to restore fiscal discipline. It means reduction of fiscal deficit to extent of just 3% of GDP, as suggested by fund bank policies. This is suggested by fund bank policies. They want to increase just 3% of their GDP. In this way, the budget aimed at containing government expenditure and augmentation revenues, reversing the downtrend in the share of direct taxes to total tax revenues, and curbing the conspicuous consumption. Some of the important policy initiatives introduced for correcting the fiscal imbalance were reduction of fertilizer and fertilizer subsidies, abolition of subsidies on the sugar, and disinvestment of a part of the government's equity, the government equity holdings in select public sector undertakings. Gradually, the expenditure on welfare measures were reduced. Takes on corporate sectors were reduced and takes on poor people were increased. So this is the fiscal reforms made by the government. Goods and Services Tax (GST). Goods and Services Tax is defined as the tax levied when a consumer buys a goods or services. So this is levied when the consumer buying goods and services, which is GST. It is proposed to be a comprehensive indirect tax levied on manufacturer, sale and consumption of goods and as well as services. Okay, this is proposed to be overall indirect tax, the comprehensive indirect tax levied on manufacturer, sale and consumption of goods and services. GST aims to replace all indirect taxes levied on goods and services. What are the taxes levied by the government to the goods and services when they purchasing? All the direct taxes and all aimed to replace as GST. So the Indian central government and the state government for importing here. GST would eliminate the cascading effect of taxes on the production and distribution of goods and services. It is also a one-point tax. We know that sales tax, VAT, everything. So n number of taxes already the business papers were paid. After the introduction of GST, all the taxes are coming under one umbrella. It is also a one-point tax, unlike VAT, which was a multi-point tax. So GST is a multi-point tax. The Goods and Services Tax Act was passed in the Parliament on 29th March 2017. Underline it. The Act came into effect on 1st July 2017. The motto is One Nation, One Market, One Tax. This is the motto. So what are the advantages of GST? So let us see the advantages of GST. Before going to know the advantages of GST, current GST rates in India given here, go through the flowchart given here, the goods and services tax rates 0%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. Depends upon the commodities. Okay. Advantages of the GST. Removing cascading tax effect. So this is advantages. Removing cascading tax effect, single point tax, higher threshold for registration. So difficulties of registration and all removing. So that they are going higher threshold for registration. Composition scheme for small business. Online simpler procedure under GST. So online procedure also given by the government to register. Defined treatment for e-commerce. So defined treatment given by the government to e-commerce. Increased efficiency in logistics. So the logistics also increased. Regulating the unorganized sectors. So through the GST, they can regulate the unorganized sectors. These are the advantages of GST. Next one is monetary and financial sector reforms. Monetary reforms aimed at doing away with the interest rate distortion and rationalizing the structure of lending rates. The lending rates should be structurized, okay, and nationalized. The rationalization of the lending rates. The new policy tried in many ways to make the banking system more efficient. Okay, n number of policies were made. The new economic policy is an important policy. So that through the new economic policy tried in many ways to make the banking system more effective and efficient. Some of the measures undertaken were reserve requirements. So the reduction in statutory liquidity ratio SLR and the cash reserve ratio CRR. These were recommended by the Narasimha Committee report. So SLR and CRR should be reserved. The Narasimha Committee report said 1991 it was proposed to cut down the SLR from 38.5% to 25% within the time span of 3 years. Within the 3 years, they want to increase the percentage. Okay, 38.5 to 25%. So they want to cut down. Similarly, it was proposed that the CRR be brought down to 3 to 5% over a period of 4 years. So that CRR should be brought down 3 to 5% over a period of 4 years. Interest rate liberalization. The interest rate liberalization earlier RBI controlled the interest rate payable on deposits, the interest rates which could be charged for bank loans. So that interest rate depends upon the RBI. So they only controlled maybe the interest rates payable on deposit or the interest rates which could be charged for bank loans. Greater competition among public sector, private sector and foreign banks and elimination of administrative constraints. So that liberalization of bank branch licensing policy in order to rationalize the existing branch network. So that through the liberalization, the bank branches licensing policy in order to rationalize the existing branch network. So already they're having some banks, so that the commercial banks and private banks, every banks having licenses. So all the banks, the branch banks also rationalized and existing branches with their network. Banks were given freedom to relocate branches and open specialized branches. They can allowed. So banks were given freedom to relocate the branches and open specialized branches. Guidelines for opening new private banks sectors. So guidelines also given to the new private sector banks. New accounting norms regarding classification of assets and provisions of bad debt were introduced in tune with the Narasimha Committee report. So the Narasimha Committee report were controlled and resolved SLR and CRR, we know that, in 1991. So they gave one report for new accounting norms regarding classification of asset and provisions of bad debt were introduced in tune with the Narasimha Committee. So advised by the Narasimha Committee, the new regulations were brought. So this lesson is over. 9th chapter we completed. Okay, today we completed the concept special economic zone, fiscal reforms, goods and services tax, which is GST, advantages of GST, monetary and financial sector reforms. So today itself we completed the 9th chapter. Go through the chapter fully. You have to write 2 marks from the lesson. Okay, all the 2 marks you have to write today test and send to me.